Welcome the rare gems. Being the black sheep of your family isn't a curse, it's proof that you're built differently. While others follow the script written for them, you question, challenge, and rewrite the rules. And that makes people uncomfortable. They don't know what to do with someone who refuses to conform, who doesn't seek validation, and who walks their own path without apology. But here's the truth. Standing out is a sign of strength, not failure. If you've always felt like you don't belong, if your thoughts and choices constantly put you at odds with your family, you're not broken, you're rare. You think deeper, move differently, and refuse to be controlled by tradition or expectations. That's not a flaw, that's power. And while they may call you difficult, rebellious, or even selfish, what they really mean is that they don't understand you. But you don't need them to, because the ones who change the world, who break cycles, and who create something new are never the ones who fit in. Being the black sheep means you see through the illusions, you're not easily influenced, and you have the courage to stand alone when necessary. That's a flex. And once you embrace it, there's no stopping you. Stay until the end of this video, because what you're about to hear will confirm everything you've always known deep inside. This is your truth, unfiltered, raw, and powerful. Let's get into it. Let's get started, the rare gems. Number 1. You're the only one who questions family traditions. In every family there are unspoken rules, traditions that have been followed for generations without question. Everyone plays their part, does what's expected, and never stops to ask why things are the way they are. But then there's you. You don't just accept things because that's how it's always been. You ask questions that make people uncomfortable. You challenge customs that don't make sense. And instead of being met with curiosity or open discussion, you're met with resistance. You've probably been told you're being difficult or disrespectful. Maybe they say you overthink things or that you should just go along with what everyone else is doing. But deep down, you know the truth. Some traditions exist not because they add value, but because people are afraid to let them go. They're built on outdated beliefs, on control, on keeping people in line. And the moment you question them, you expose the cracks in the system. That's why your family reacts the way they do. It's not because you're wrong, it's because you're making them face something they'd rather ignore. You see through the expectations, the pressure, the guilt disguised as family loyalty. Maybe it's the way roles are divided. Who is expected to sacrifice? Who gets to lead? Who is always silenced? Maybe it's the way emotions are handled. Things swept under the rug, problems ignored, pain passed down like an inheritance. But while others accept these things as normal, you refuse. You break the cycle. You demand something better, and that makes you dangerous to the system. When you refuse to follow the script, you force others to look at the flaws in the story. But here's the thing. Questioning tradition doesn't mean you're rejecting your family. It means you're refusing to accept something just because it's familiar. And while they may never understand, that's their limitation, not yours. You weren't meant to follow. You were meant to think for yourself. And that alone sets you apart in a way they will never be able to control. Number 2. You challenge the family's elders know best mentality. In many families, age is treated like a badge of unquestionable authority. The older generation speaks, and everyone else is expected to nod, agree, and follow without hesitation. It doesn't matter if their beliefs are outdated or their decisions flawed. Questioning them is seen as disrespectful, but you don't play by those rules. You respect experience, but you don't mistake it for wisdom. You know that just because someone has lived longer doesn't mean they've learned the right lessons. You've probably been labeled as arrogant or rebellious simply because you dared to ask why. You don't accept the idea that something should be done a certain way just because that's how it's always been. If a belief no longer serves a purpose, or worse, if it causes harm, you have no problem challenging it. This makes some elders in your family uncomfortable. They expect obedience, not critical thinking. They see your independence as defiance rather than growth. But you don't challenge them out of disrespect. You do it because progress doesn't happen by blindly following old rules. You see through the fear-based thinking, the need for control, the resistance to change that keeps people stuck, and instead of submitting, you push back. You choose your own path, even if it means standing alone. This refusal to conform makes you an outsider, but it also makes you free. While others are trapped in cycles of outdated traditions and unquestioned authority, you move forward with clarity and purpose. You're not reckless. You listen, you learn, but you make your own choices. And that's something they can't stand. They can't manipulate you with fear. They can't use their age to silence you. They can't make you follow a path that doesn't align with who you are. They may call it disrespect, but deep down, they know the truth. You are not naive. You are not reckless. You are simply unwilling to trade your intelligence for blind obedience. And that makes you different. That makes you powerful. Number 3, you've accepted that you'll never fully belong, and that's fine. At some point, you stop trying. Not out of bitterness, not because you gave up, but because you realized the truth. You were never meant to fit in. You spent years wondering why you felt like an outsider in your own family, why conversations felt forced, why your thoughts and values never seemed to align with theirs. You tried to meet them halfway, to soften your edges, to make yourself more digestible. But no matter what you did, the feeling remained, you don't belong. And now, you've accepted it, not as a loss, but as freedom. Belonging isn't about forcing yourself into spaces that reject who you are. It's not about silencing your opinions to make others comfortable or pretending to be someone you're not just to feel included. You've outgrown that need. You've realized that real belonging isn't found in a family that tolerates you. It's found in people who see you, understand you, and respect you for who you truly are. You've stopped chasing approval from those who will never fully understand you. You no longer take their disapproval personally because you see it for what it is, a reflection of their limitations, not yours. You don't feel guilty for being different, for thinking deeper, for refusing to shrink yourself to fit into a space that was never meant for you. Instead of mourning the connection you never had, you embrace the independence it has given you. This isn't loneliness, it's power. While they remain trapped in cycles of tradition, expectations, and forced harmony, you move freely. You answer to no one's expectations but your own. And while they may whisper about how you've changed or how you've pulled away, the truth is, you've simply stepped into who you were always meant to be. They may never understand you, but that's fine. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to stand out. And now that you've accepted that, there's nothing stopping you. Number 4, you've built your own family outside of blood ties. At some point you realize that family isn't about DNA, it's about connection. You spent years trying to find your place among people who shared your blood, but not your mindset. You tolerated the judgment, the passive-aggressive remarks, the constant pressure to conform. You kept hoping that one day they would understand you, support you, or at the very least, respect you. But that day never came, and instead of waiting for acceptance that would never arrive, you did something stronger. You walked away and built your own family. This wasn't an easy decision. Society drills the idea into our heads that blood ties are unbreakable, that family is everything, no matter what. But you learned the hard way that some bonds do more harm than good. Love shouldn't come with conditions. Support shouldn't feel like a transaction. And you refused to keep chasing a connection that left you feeling unseen and unheard. Instead, you started gravitating toward people who matched your energy, those who understood you without explanations, who valued honesty over appearances, who stood by you without needing something in return. These people, your chosen family, don't guilt-trip you for being different. They don't hold your past against you or try to mold you into something you're not. They see your strength, your vision, your independence, and they celebrate it. With them, you don't have to shrink yourself. You don't have to tiptoe around sensitive egos or play along with toxic dynamics. You can just be. And that's when it hits you. Blood may be thicker than water, but energy is stronger than both. You no longer feel obligated to maintain relationships just because of a shared last name. Instead, you invest in those who truly align with your soul. This kind of family isn't built on duty or obligation. It's built on respect, understanding, and a deep knowing that real connections are chosen, not forced. They may call you cold for walking away, but you know better. You didn't lose a family. You gained one that actually feels like home. Number 5. You think on a level they can't comprehend. There's a reason you always feel like you're speaking a different language when you talk to your family. It's not that you're trying to be difficult or rebellious. It's that your mind operates on a level they can't reach. You see things they don't. You think beyond the limits they've accepted, and you refuse to settle for the version of life they believe is the only option. To them, your ambition sounds like arrogance. Your vision sounds like fantasy. Your refusal to conform sounds like recklessness. But the truth is, you're not unrealistic. You're simply ahead of your time. They don't understand why you question traditions they blindly follow. They can't grasp why you refuse to accept limitations they've made peace with. They look at you with confusion, sometimes even resentment, because your way of thinking challenges everything they've built their lives around. And instead of trying to understand, they dismiss you. They call you too much, accuse you of chasing the impossible, or tell you that one day you'll wake up and see the world as they do. But that day will never come because you were never meant to live inside their small reality. You've realized that explaining yourself is pointless. No matter how much you break it down, some people will never understand what they aren't ready to see, and that's fine. You don't need validation from those who choose comfort over growth. You don't need approval from those who fear change. You're not here to fit in. You're here to evolve. So let them talk. Let them shake their heads and call you naive. Let them watch from the sidelines while you build a life they once told you was impossible. Because one day they'll look back and realize you weren't the one who was out of touch, they were. And by then, you'll be too far ahead to hear their apologies. Number 6. You're unapologetically honest, even when it stings. There's something about raw honesty that unsettles people, especially in families where truth is avoided, twisted or softened to keep the peace. But you don't play that game. You say what needs to be said, and you don't dress it up to make it more digestible. You don't believe in false niceties or pretending something is fine when it clearly isn't. And for that, you're seen as difficult. Not because you're wrong, but because you refuse to lie just to make others comfortable. You've probably noticed how people react when you speak your mind. Some get defensive, some act like you've just committed an unforgivable offense. Others try to shut you down, telling you to keep your thoughts to yourself. But the truth has a way of cutting through the illusions people build around themselves. And when you bring it into the open, it forces them to see what they've been avoiding. That's why they call you harsh, rude, or insensitive. It's not about your delivery. It's about the fact that you don't allow them to hide behind excuses. But here's what they don't tell you. Even the ones who resent you for your honesty respect you for it. Because deep down, they know you're not fake. They know you won't tell them what they want to hear just to stay on their good side. And that kind of integrity is rare. It may not always win you approval, but it earns you something far more valuable. Genuine respect from those who actually value truth over comfort. Yes, your honesty stings. Yes, it makes you the outlier in a family that prefers silence over confrontation. But the alternative is living in a world of half-truths and unspoken tensions, and that's never been your style. You're not here to make people feel good at the cost of reality. You're here to say what needs to be said, whether they like it or not. And that kind of truth is something no one can take away from you. Number 7. You refuse to be a fixer for family dysfunction. Every family has that one person expected to hold everything together. The one who listens to everyone's problems, absorbs the tension, and smooths things over when conflict erupts. Maybe for a while that person was you. You were the one they turned to when things got messy, the one expected to mediate fights, provide emotional support, or be the stable rock while everyone else fell apart. But at some point, you saw the trap for what it was. You realized that their peace always came at the cost of your own. And so you made the boldest move you could. You stepped back. You stopped answering calls meant only for venting, not resolution. You stopped rushing to clean up their messes while they continued making the same mistakes. You stopped sacrificing your emotional well-being just to keep the illusion of a functional family, and they didn't like it. They accused you of being selfish, distant, or even cruel, because in their minds your role wasn't a choice, it was an obligation. They wanted your emotional labor, but they never asked if you had the energy to give it. They expected your support but never offered any in return, and when you finally refused to carry the weight, they resented you for it. What they fail to understand is that walking away wasn't an act of cruelty, it was survival. You weren't put on this earth to be their emotional crutch. You weren't born to be the fixer while they refused to fix themselves. You gave them chances to grow, to take responsibility, to face their own dysfunction, but they chose comfort over change. And that's not your burden to carry. They can call you cold, but the truth is, you've just learned a lesson they refuse to accept. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's self-sacrifice. And you're done setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. Number 8. You see through family lies and cover-ups. Every family has its secrets, the things nobody talks about but everyone knows. The lies disguised as love, the favoritism passed off as fairness, the history that's been rewritten to protect certain people's reputations. Most just go along with it, pretending not to notice, playing their roles to keep the peace. But not you. You see through it all. You connect the dots they desperately try to erase. You recognize the patterns they refuse to acknowledge. And because you refuse to play along, you're labeled as the problem. They call you difficult because you won't pretend. You won't smile at the relative everyone secretly fears. You won't ignore the obvious favoritism, the gaslighting, the hypocrisy. You won't sit through conversations where history is rewritten and the truth is conveniently erased. When they say, "That never happened," you remember exactly how it did. When they excuse toxic behavior with, "That's just how they are," you know that's just another way of saying, "We enable it." They don't like that you see the cracks in their perfect picture. They don't like that you refuse to be fooled by forced smiles and fake apologies. So instead of facing the truth, they turn on you. They call you the troublemaker, the one who ruins the mood, the one who can't just let things go. But what they really mean is, you see too much, you know too much, and that makes us uncomfortable. They want silence, but you were never built for that. You don't expose the truth to cause chaos. You do it because living in denial is worse. You refuse to betray yourself by pretending. And if that makes you the outcast, so be it. One day, they'll realize you weren't the villain. You were just the only one brave enough to see things as they really are. But by then, you'll have already moved on, free from their illusions, no longer carrying the weight of secrets that were never yours to keep. Number 9. You walk away from toxic relatives without guilt. There's a myth that family is everything, that blood ties mean unconditional loyalty, that no matter what happens, you must endure, forgive, and keep coming back. But you don't buy into that. You've seen firsthand what happens when people hold on to toxic relationships just because they share DNA. You've watched relatives manipulate, guilt-trip, and drain the life out of those who feel obligated to stay. And you made a choice. They may be family, but that doesn't mean they have a right to your peace. You don't tolerate emotional blackmail disguised as love. You don't entertain the endless cycle of drama where apologies mean nothing and the same toxic patterns repeat. You don't let guilt keep you tied to people who take more than they give. And when you set boundaries, you mean them. You don't threaten to cut ties just to make a point. You do it, and you don't look back. This decision makes others uncomfortable. They whisper about how you've changed, how you're ungrateful, how family should come first. But they never stop to ask why you left. They ignore the years of manipulation, the disrespect, the emotional exhaustion that led you to walk away in the first place. Because admitting that would mean facing the truth, that family isn't just about genetics. It's about how people treat you. Some will try to reel you back in, using nostalgia, guilt, or the opinions of others to convince you that you should come home, play nice, keep the peace. But you've outgrown that game. You know that walking away isn't weakness, it's strength. It takes courage to say, "I deserve better," to accept that some people, no matter their title in your life, are not meant to stay. And while they may resent you for it, they also know one thing for sure. You are no longer someone they can control. You have reclaimed your peace, and nothing, not even family, is worth losing that again. Number 10. You refuse to play the family politics game. Every family has its own unspoken rules, a web of favoritism, silent grudges, and invisible hierarchies that determine who gets what, who holds power, and who is expected to fall in line. Some play the game willingly, manipulating, appeasing, or staying silent to maintain their place in the system. But not you. You see through the nonsense, the forced smiles, the hidden resentments, the emotional debts people expect you to pay. And instead of participating, you walk away. This refusal to engage makes you an outsider. You're not easily guilt-tripped into obligations that don't serve you. You don't chase approval from relatives who hand it out like currency, rewarding those who obey and punishing those who don't. You don't fake affection for family members who have done nothing to earn your respect. And that, more than anything, makes people uncomfortable. They don't know how to control someone who refuses to play by their rules. You've likely been accused of being cold, distant, or even disrespectful. But what they call cold is just self-respect. What they see as distance is actually peace. What they label as disrespect is simply a refusal to be manipulated. You understand the cost of staying in a toxic cycle, where love is conditional and loyalty is tested through emotional blackmail. You've seen how it drains people, how it forces them to betray themselves just to keep the illusion of family unity alive. And you won't do it. Walking away from family politics doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself to not be used as a pawn. It means you won't be dragged into petty rivalries, guilt-laced obligations, or fake displays of closeness. You've chosen truth over appearances, peace over drama, and self-worth over forced loyalty. Some may resent you for it, but deep down, they also know they can't touch you. You are the one who broke free, the one who can't be swayed, the one who decided that family should be built on real connections, not power plays. And that makes you untouchable. Number 11. You're more self-aware than anyone else in the family. You've never been the type to just accept things at face value. While your family moves through life on autopilot, repeating patterns, ignoring their own flaws, and blaming everything but themselves, you've done the work. You've questioned, reflected, and taken a hard look at yourself even when it was uncomfortable. You've broken cycles they don't even realize exist. And that self-awareness makes you a force they don't know how to handle. You understand your triggers, your strengths, your weaknesses. You recognize when emotions are controlling you instead of the other way around. You've learned to sit with discomfort rather than bury it, to face the truth instead of avoiding it. While they lash out and justify their actions with excuses, you take accountability. While they let pride and ego dictate their relationships, you prioritize growth and understanding. They see this as overthinking. You know it's wisdom. This difference makes them uneasy. It forces them to see a level of depth they've spent their entire lives avoiding. Your ability to articulate emotions, to break down behaviors, to see things from multiple perspectives, it's foreign to them. They'd rather sweep things under the rug, pretend problems don't exist, and label you as too sensitive or too deep when you call out what they refuse to acknowledge. They might roll their eyes at your introspection, dismiss your emotional intelligence as unnecessary, but deep down, they know you're onto something. They see your clarity, your confidence, your ability to navigate life with awareness instead of blind reaction. And whether they admit it or not, they envy it. Because while they remain trapped in cycles they don't understand, you've already broken free. You've done the inner work they're too afraid to start. And that's why you'll always be different. Not because you think you're better, but because you've chosen to evolve while they've chosen to stay the same. Listen, rare gems, as I wrapped up. Being the black sheep of your family isn't a weakness. It's proof that you were never meant to blend in. You see what they ignore, question what they blindly accept, and refuse to play by rules that don't make sense. That doesn't make you wrong, that makes you different. And different is powerful. They may misunderstand you, label you difficult, or act like you're the problem. But the truth is, they're only uncomfortable because you don't fit the mold they expected you to. You won't shrink yourself to make them comfortable. You won't beg for their approval or pretend to be someone you're not, just to be accepted. And that's exactly why you stand out. Being the black sheep isn't about being against your family. It's about being for yourself. It's about knowing who you are, setting boundaries, and refusing to live under someone else's expectations. It's about embracing the fact that you were built for something bigger than just following the crowd. So stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Stop waiting for acceptance from those who were never meant to see you. Keep being bold. Keep thinking for yourself. Keep walking your own path, even if you have to walk it alone for a while. Because the further you go, the more you'll realize you were never the black sheep. You were just the one strong enough to break free. Thank you for watching The Rare Gems, and God bless you.